This computer feels like a love letter to the iMac. Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, and I'm just going to say it up front. The M1 iMac is hands down one of the best iMacs that I have ever used, and packs so much power into a sleek, beautiful, all-in-one design that it will end up being my main desktop computer. Now, although I kind of spoiled you on my take on the iMac at the start of the video, let me tell you how I arrived at that conclusion. The iMac I'll be reviewing for this review is a top-tier spec with 16 gigabytes of memory and 2 Thunderbolt ports and 2 USB-C ports, but you can get a base model iMac from a starting price of as low as $1,300. But be warned, it does come with just 2 Thunderbolt ports, and if you want 4 USB-C ports, you'll have to spend $1,500. Now first, let's talk about the design of this new iMac, because I don't get to say that every day. In fact, the last time we got a major design change to the iMac was 9 years ago with the 2012 version. The design is familiar yet radically different from previous iterations, mixing together design elements of so many previous Macs. The 7 different color choices is reminiscent of the very first iMac G3. The white bezels on the front hark back to the iMac G4 and G5, while the more sleek and modern design gives nods to the last Retina iMac, and the uniform side and back point more towards the future with this iMac looking more like an iPad Pro on a stand. Going back to those colors, they are beautiful. The blue model that I have is stunning, with a dark, bold blue color on the back and a more pastel, lighter blue color on the front chin area and the stand. And some people were upset with Apple keeping the iconic iMac chin, but I think it looks great in person, and without it, you wouldn't be able to appreciate the nice color choices as much. Oh, it also houses the impressive speaker system and literally the entire components for the entire computer. So quit your complaining. Overall, it's a pleasing look on my desk, which is facing a white wall and adds a nice touch of color that is pleasant to look at. Apple really went all out on the experience here too, making sure that everything was color accented to match your iMac color of choice. So everything from the keyboard to the Magic Trackpad, Magic Mouse, the power cord, the USB-C to Lightning cable, and even the pins connecting the power cable are all color matched to whatever iMac color you pick. All of this work on even the parts you don't really see makes this computer feel like a love letter to the iMac itself. The new iMac is also really thin, and as some have pointed out, thinner than the original iPhone. It's so thin, in fact, that the left side of the iMac is where you'll find the headphone jack because it's too thick to put on the rear. And the rear iMac only supports 4 USB-C type connectors, and I'm guessing it's because it's too thin to house any other port. And because it's so thin, it also looks like Apple was not able to put the power supply in the computer. So now there's a separate power brick that I think is a step back in design and a bit more inelegant. But at least on the mid-tier and up versions, it does have a built-in Ethernet port in the power brick, which is clever. Now yes, the thinness is impressive, but what really got me was how light the iMac is. Weighing in at 9.8 pounds, this thing feels like an entirely new category of desktop computers that could be considered semi-portable. And I wouldn't be shocked if people move this iMac around to different setups more frequently, because it's not as much as a hassle as it would have been with heavier designs. The screen is also beautiful. It is now a 24-inch 4.5K Retina display with a resolution of 4,480 by 2,520 at 218 pixels per inch with a P3 wide color display and 500 nits of brightness, and the option for a True Tone display, which adaptively changes the color temperature of the screen as you're using it. Yeah, if you used any of the other previous Retina iMac displays before, it's basically the same thing, but that is to say, really good. I love the iMac's display. It has a great combination of a sharp resolution, excellent viewing angles, accurate colors, and it makes it one of the best displays on the market. And hey, It has a whole entire computer inside of it too. Well, I guess there is a change because, the previous iteration of this iMac was 21.5 inches. Now this display is bigger. Now the exact screen size is 23.5 inches. Apple calls it a 24-inch display, but if you look at the specifications, it measures out to 23.5 inches, but it's a big improvement in display size over the previous model. In recent years, the 21-inch iMac was really starting to feel too small at times, and it almost felt like a toy monitor. The 24-inch version is a lot more comfortable to work on. I think it's a good size for most people, but if you're used to the bigger 27-inch monitors out there, you may have a harder time adjusting. But personally, as someone who's used those bigger 27-inch iMacs, I really had no trouble adjusting to the display. If anything, I just moved the computer a little bit closer to make up for that smaller display, and it's working out fine for me. Now, this excellent display is also matched with an impressive 6-speaker system, and it sounds really good for such a thin design. The speakers provide room-filling sound that's clear on the high end and gives a surprising amount of bass on the low end. Pair that together with Apple's spatial audio feature and put on a good Dolby Atmos film, and your heart will literally sink when the bass hits at certain scenes. Watching movies like Dunkirk, I could hear the sound of bullets whizzing past me, and it was more immersive than traditional flat computer monitor speakers. Basically, the speakers are so good on this iMac that I'm not going to be adding any of my own additional external speakers. Also, I don't think you'll need to add any sort of external webcam either, as the 1080p webcam paired together with the image signal processing on the M1 chip gives some shockingly good video quality for a inbuilt webcam. Here's a test I did with no video lighting to kind of mimic how most people would probably use this webcam. I also filmed it near a window, so, the highlights would be blown out, and I think overall it looked pretty good. Okay, and this is a recording test on the new 24-inch iMac webcam. I actually have some sound going off in the back too, just to see, because we're also testing the microphones, right? This is supposed to cancel out sounds in the backgrounds, focus more on my voice. And I also tried to make sure there was no other lighting. So I wanted to do this more in a natural setup, as people probably have it in their house, where they're probably not using any fancy video lights. And so I didn't turn on any of the lights here, just have some natural lighting through the window. And yeah, I think this webcam, for a built-in webcam, this is pretty much all you need for your Zoom meetings, or, even on my podcast, GadgetCast. I just used this webcam built in. I didn't even use my external camera, which I would usually do, and hey, it was definitely more than passable enough. Speaking of including things, you also get Apple's Magic Mouse and keyboard included with the purchase of your iMac. And while they're mostly the same, the keyboard on the 8-core GPU model does have Touch ID built into the keyboard, which works just as well as it does on Apple's MacBooks, allowing you to quickly log into the Mac without typing your password, and as an added security step to auto-filling passwords in Safari and unlocking other parts of the computer. Okay, now impressively enough, we've spent all this time talking about what's new on the iMac without even talking about what's actually new powering this computer, and that is Apple's own M1 chip. The model I'm using for this review is the 8-core GPU version with 16 gigabytes of memory, and the M1 chip in this iMac is just as fast and just as capable as any of the previous M1 Macs. Meaning that for most of the everyday people watching this video, your apps will load quickly, you can have multiple apps open at once with no problem, you can browse the web, listen to music, type up a Word document, go through your photo collection, edit your home videos, and you can watch video too, all on that amazing display with the great speaker system. All of those everyday tasks you spend the majority of your time doing on a computer, it works great, and because of the power efficiency of the M1, even though this iMac has 2 fans, you're probably never going to hear them spin up in this use case scenario. But this consumer level iMac, which, make no mistake, this is for the average everyday consumer, it can do a whole lot more than that too. Now this section is more for my nerds out there. What's up, my nerds? In my benchmarking, the M1 iMac actually scored the highest out of any of the new M1 Macs, getting slightly above the M1 Mac Mini in single and multi-core performance. The same can be said with my more intensive Geekbench R23 benchmark, which really just hammers the CPU, and the M1 iMac again outscored the Mac Mini with 7,737 points. Benchmarks are just benchmarks, but they're fun to look at and give us some sort of score to compare it against the other machines. In real-world testing though, the iMac was able to, just like any of my other M1 Macs, fly through all of my 4K video editing that I do to run this YouTube channel. Even on H.265 footage, which is more compressed and lets the computer handle more of the work. My timeline was incredibly smooth in Final Cut Pro, even working with 3 multicam clips and multiple streams of 4K video. It handled it, no problem. My only real concern was that I didn't hear the fan spin up, even when exporting a 16-minute 4K video. I started to think that my iMac model was defective and the fans weren't working, so I actually downloaded a fan controller to check and see if the fans were active, and sure enough they were. And toggling the fans to the max setting, then I could hear them. I think that is a testament to this iMac's design though. It's so quiet, so efficient with that M1 chip that even though it has these fans to make sure the processor doesn't throttle as much as it would on like an M1 machine without a fan like the MacBook Air, it doesn't really have to engage them. It's almost like they're just here for show at times. So not only will this iMac be able to handle basic tasks with ease, it's even well suited for professional workloads too. In fact, creators on a budget looking for an all-in-one solution with a beautiful display, great speakers, a nice webcam, well, this iMac has it all with just a single power cable going into the back. With that being said, the M1 iMac isn't perfect and does make some regressions. The port selection is reduced to a maximum of 4 USB-C connectors on the back and maybe an Ethernet connection in your power brick. So it's missing out on previous useful connections like USB-A and creature comforts for me like an SD card slot. Meaning you'll probably need to buy a few adapters or a Thunderbolt dock to greatly expand the port selection of this computer. It's not a deal breaker, but for a desktop computer, it is a bit disappointing to see. The M1, I guess, really wasn't meant for a lot of I/O connections, but I am willing to make that sacrifice for this computer, because I really like it. Listen, the 21.5-inch iMac was never really an easy recommendation. The screen was too small, the performance wasn't anything special, especially on those lower end models, and it always just seemed outclassed and outshined by the bigger, more expensive 27-inch iMac. Well, now that's no longer the case. The 24-inch iMac, I think, is the gold standard in desktop computers, and it's going to look great in your office, living room, kitchen, business, or wherever you need a sleek, all-in-one design. And I personally like it so much that I am going to be switching to this device full-time as my main computer. And I think this is the best valued iMac in years, suitable for almost anyone. All right, everyone, and that's what I think of the new M1 iMac. Please let me know what you think of it in the comments below. If you like this video, well, be sure to give me a like. If you want to see more from my channel, make sure you're subscribed. If you want to purchase an M1 iMac after watching this video, you thought my review was just the best review on YouTube, be sure to check out the affiliate links in the description below. You can purchase one from there. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone. I changed the shirt like halfway through the video, and then I, rotated the iMac so it was color matching to my shirt. Did you catch that? Obvious, right?